Yack.
You're listening to Yack. Yack is the official podcast of the AAF Greater Lehigh Valley Ad Club. Our mission is to inspire creativity and enhance the professional development of the advertising and marketing communities where we live and work. I'm your host, Bill Childs, and I'll talk with artists, designers, writers, directors, photographers, along with those who work in a creative capacity. Our aim here is to serve as a creative resource to help you stay informed, entertained, and above all, inspired. But first, I want to thank ASR Media. We appreciate your support and collaboration. When you think about it, life is a collage of memories, relationships, emotions, conversations, and all the little moments cut from the experiences that make up your life. Nobody understands that better than today's guest on the podcast. Stephen Kroninger grew up outside of Allentown in the sleepy burb of Orefield, Pennsylvania, and spent his formative years studying commercial art at Lehigh County Vo-Tech. While there, he met a charismatic teacher who was instrumental in helping him understand that an art career was something young Stephen may want to consider. After college, he headed straight to New York City and has never looked back. Stephen is a provocative collage maker and illustrator whose work has appeared in major U.S. and international publications. And he is also the author-illustrator of 3 award-winning children's books. He's worked with 80s rap group Public Enemy and comedian Chris Rock, and his art has graced the cover of Time magazine on 4 separate occasions. Kroninger's illustrations have appeared in nearly every major newspaper and magazine in the United States, and in many publications worldwide. Kroninger's work was the subject of an exhibit at the Museum of Modern Art in New York City, the only time the museum devoted a one-person show to an illustrator. His artwork can be found in the permanent collections of the Museum of Modern Art, the Library of Congress, and the National Portrait Gallery of the Smithsonian Institute in Washington, D.C., among others. We yak it up on many topics that include his unique creative process, how he allows for happy accidents in his work, and the only advice his father ever gave him that turned out to be life-changing. Here is my Yack with the incredible Stephen Kroninger. Stephen Kroninger on the podcast today. Thanks for being here, man. I really appreciate this.
Thanks for having me.
How are you doing, by the way?
How am I doing? I'm good. For a guy my age, I'm okay.
Good. I got to be totally honest here. I am very excited to talk to you because we share something that you may know about. We shared a teacher, different times, a Mr. Bruce Silvernail at Lehigh County Vo-Tech. I know that's where you went. You studied commercial art, right?
Right.
And I was there from 1980 to 83. And I heard this story from a mutual friend of ours, Mr. Peter Gorniak, and he told me that you said you credit Silvernail with saving your life.
Yeah, that's true.
So I need to hear more about this.
Altering my life. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so I went to Parkland High School, and I was kind of an angry young man because I was terrible in math. So I was treated like I was stupid at Parkland. And I was kind of, I was very sarcastic and very antagonistic and stuff. That was kind of the reaction.
Sure.
So I got into Bruce's class 3 to 6 at Vo-Tech. And
the night class, when they had night classes there.
Yeah, I didn't have to be to school, regular school, Parkland till noon.
Oh,
so
okay.
I went to Parkland noon to 2:30. And then 3 to 6 for Vo-Tech. So, I was my usual nasty self, I guess. I remember once them taking me out in the hall and, reading me the riot act because I was, acting up in class and stuff. So what happened was I started to like him.
Yeah.
And part of it was that he was from Philadelphia, which I thought was very exotic at the time.
Okay.
And he carried a bag, like a purse, but it wasn't,
okay.
And this was, Schnecksville, Pennsylvania in the 70s. Men didn't carry bags. So I thought he was very interesting. So I used to draw all the time at home on these little cards. My father was a garbage man. And he would bring on these cards that from the backs of shirts that were white, those.
Oh, yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, so he'd bring home piles of those, and I would just draw on those, draw on those, and draw on those. And one
Wow.
day, I decided to bring those in and show Mr. Silvernail, and he flipped. He thought they were great, and he went on and on. He would took me out into the hall again, and he was just praising this work. And I remember there was one. It was like it was for Vietnam, a young boy on crutches and stuff, a Vietnamese kid. And it said Nixon's the one. I remember he really liked that one.
Okay, right.
And then it just kind of built from there, and we became fast friends. And I mean, I was headed towards dropping out, or working on my father's garbage truck. But he over the 2 years, I guess, 11th and 12th grade, he just steered me toward going to college and things, and started taking my work more seriously, and taking myself more seriously with my work.
So he saw something. He saw something in you.
Yeah, and then we became like great friends. I mean, at one point I had to go to the hospital, and every night when I was in the hospital, he would come and have dinner with my parents to find out how I was doing. I mean, we became that close. Also, because of the college thing, he went to Temple University, and he thought Tyler School of Art, which was in the mid-70s was the art school. I mean, I really don't know anything now if it is or not, but then it was the art school, and he had me apply there. I never thought I would get in. He drove me from Allentown, Orefield, down to Philadelphia to go to the school.
Okay.
And I got into Temple, into Tyler, and but my parents couldn't afford it, so I ended up going to Kutztown,
which has a wonderful program, by the way. I mean, Kutztown does a tremendous job.
Sheridan School of Art. Yeah, I had great art teachers there. I just wasn't cut out for the other class. I mean, I had no discipline, and you had to pass math. So I knew I was never going to pass math. So I knew I had to get what I could out of Kutztown, but I knew I was never going to get a degree.
So did you get a degree from Kutztown?
No.
Interesting. Okay. Wow.
The funny thing is that years later, one of the professors there put up my name. They wanted to give me an honorary degree. But the president of the college at the time looked at my transcript, and he just went, no, which means they didn't understand what an honorary degree was. But yeah.
All right, this is interesting because Bruce Silvernail was instrumental for me as well. I remember 10th grade, I was in his class at Lehigh County Vo-Tech, and he would kind of come over to my desk when I would be kind of doing my thing, and he would say to me, "What do you want to do next year? Like, what are you going to do?" I said, "I want to go to commercial art. I want commercial art." He's like, "Okay." He's like, "Well, I'll make sure you get 100." And I did, but him seeing something in me made me want to do better. I want to be better than just kind of, and I knew I wanted art as a part of my life. I just didn't know how it was going to manifest. Right. But Silvernail, and let's be honest here, it was an acquired taste. He was right. He didn't. But he was
our taste.
Yes, correct. When he liked you, he really liked you, and he did not suffer fools. Like, there were kids in this class that it's funny. I teach now at LCTI, and I'm teaching the class we were both in. I'm teaching commercial art, and it's I love it. It's great. It's total full circle moment for me. But when I think back about Bruce and just how much I just liked the guy, I admired him. And I know a lot of other students did not. They were not on his program or his wavelength. And I just thought, well,
he wasn't the area.
Yeah, right. He was like a fish out of water.
When you came up in school, he wasn't the people you normally saw as teachers.
Correct. And I love that. That's what I loved about him. He was, I mean, I think he was quirky. He was quirky. He was different. He was fun. And I just was like, oh yeah, more of this, please. But here's the crazy thing, Stephen. I can't find him anywhere. I have not been able to locate him. I wanted to find him and tell him, like, thanks for giving me a career, or for the career that I had. You put me on the path. I cannot find him. And I went on websites where you can kind of put people's names in, and then you get addresses back. I sent cards. They all came back. I asked the school. No one is able to find this guy. And I don't think he's deceased. I think he's out there somewhere. I would love to be. I know you want to talk to him. I want to talk to him, and Peter Gorniak wants to talk to him. There are 3 students of his that went on and had a full career in graphic design, in art, in what you did. And it's just been so disappointing. I can't find him. I mean, I'm short of like starting to think like he's MIA.
Well, I actually did get to talk to him about, I don't know, 25, 30 years ago.
Okay.
And did get to thank him for that. Like,
Oh, that's cool. Good.
yeah. Well, I sent you the print that he gave me.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And that
I
was
have it.
part of,
Thank
we
you.
were corresponding back and forth, but yeah, then it just dropped off.
Well, tell me how did that go? How did he take it well? Was he appreciative of you reaching out or getting to talk to him, or?
Well, we were just writing back and forth, but yeah, I mean, sure. I mean, he's a teacher, so they like to hear that they're, you know,
Yeah.
well, you know, because you're a teacher.
Well, yeah. Well, it's one of the things you don't, it's funny. Kids aren't real good at giving feedback in the moment. Teaching is one of those things where you're planting seeds under, for trees of which you will not sit under. You will not, you're
right.
I'm the gardener. I'm making sure they get watered, the ground is tilled properly and the soil is good. And then I move on. They move on and they grow. And I hope my hope is that I'm going to hear back on how they do and as they succeed and move forward in their career. But so I just think that's when you have a teacher like that you really resonate with, that's magic, right? It can really be kind of a magical thing.
I mean,
and you,
the course of my life.
What's up?
It changed the course of my life. I was headed nowhere. I was like, just,
really
kind of, I spent all my time basically back then in high school. I spent it by myself, listening to music or reading or drawing. Mm-hmm. And there was no, like, he was the encouragement. There wasn't any from anywhere else. Well, there was some from my high school art teacher in that he was like an academic painter and older. Mm-hmm. And he kind of looked at me with like a funny eye, but he did once give me, after seeing my sketchbook, he gave me a book of Peter Bruegel of etchings, the 7 Deadly Sins.
Okay.
I thought, well, okay. And so, yeah. So he let me take it home and I kept it for a while. And then I eventually bought a copy for myself. But I thought like, okay, in his way, he was, mm-hmm. he was encouraging me, but not in the way Bruce did. I remember once too, I remember once he talked about my energy and he said, if you jumped out the window, you'd go straight up. But we didn't have any like, I don't know what you would call them, problem kids in our class with Bruce Silvernail. I don't remember anybody being a problem. Everybody was very enthusiastic.
Really? Okay.
All right. But this was earlier. This was 74 and 75.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I had him in 10th grade. And then what they did at that time was you would specialize. So my 11th and 12th grade years were in commercial art with Gary Maurer and Rhonda Botel. Those were
I remember Rhonda.
Those are my two instructors when I was in high school. I know there was I think someone before Gary was Tom Waring, perhaps.
Oh no.
There was a Tom. Okay, but I had Bruce in 10th grade. So they had this program where you could move around the school like every 22 days to kind of get a little taste of what you could possibly want to do. So I had architecture, printing, commercial art, and then I did a little bit of the building trades with plumbing, electrical, masonry, and I forget, some carpentry or something like that. And I remember my one electrical teacher says to me one day, he says, you're pretty good with this electrical stuff. What's the deal with that? I said, well, my dad's an electrician. He's like, okay. He's like, what do you want to do? I go, I'm going to go into commercial art. And the color drained from his face. He was mortified. He was like, commercial art? Why? You're not going to make any money in that. And I'm talking about this, and it's over 35 years ago, 39 years ago. Like, I still remember him. That felt so defeating to me. He just pulled the wind out of my sails. You know? Like, teachers need to understand how powerful their words can be to somebody. They're
in their own worlds. You know what I mean? They're not in our world.
Right.
So we're talking about Bruce was in our world.
Right. Well, go ahead.
Story about, because I had Bruce the whole time. And you mentioned Rhonda. I actually, for my senior year, I got changed to her class in the afternoon. But Bruce, like, went to the office or whatever, and he had me come back to his 3 to 6 class.
Wow.
So I had him the whole way.
He
But anyway,
definitely, yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. So to get into, because I was so bad in math, you had to pass math at Parkland in order to get into Vo-Tech. So I was in this summer school class, and the teacher was amazing because he would give us tests out of the book, and then he would yawn. He would stand up and yawn on the day we took the test, and he'd go like, "I'm going to go down to the lounge and have a smoke for about a half an hour, and then I'll come back and you guys have finished the test." And he would leave the book with the answers. Because he knew, like, if we didn't go to Vo-Tech, what were we going to do with our lives? You know, we were done.
Right.
So he would leave, and I remember, like, one kid would jump up and shout out the answers from the book, and we thought we were like pulling a fast one. And it wasn't until years later when I went, wait a minute, that teacher, he understood it much better than we did.
Unbelievable. Wow.
Yes, and then we all got into Vo-Tech, all the students.
I had a similar situation. My 7th grade guidance counselor, and I was a good student. I had good grades, but my 7th grade guidance counselor, Mr. Nagy, said to me, "Well, so what do you want to do?" I said, I want to be an art. I want to be an artist. I want to go to commercial art. I want to go to Lehigh County Vo-Tech. That's what it was called at the time. Now it's called Lehigh Career and Technical Institute, LCTI. And he would be looking at my grades. I got all A's and B's, right? And he says to me, I'll never forget. He says, "Oh no, hold on. They only take the best up there. They only take the best. They only take the best." And I was like, "Oh, okay. Well, I want to be the best." He's like, "Then you better continue to get good grades if you hope to get in there." And boy, did I take that advice. And like, I think I went from A's and B's to all A's because I wanted in there. I knew that that's where my salvation was. And I got in, and then I met Bruce. And Bruce lit that, like, if I had a little bit of a spark for art, he turned it into a flame.
Right.
And then I was on my way, and he was like, "I'll make sure you get 100." And on my report card for his class, 100. All the others were like 90, 93, 89. Commercial art, 100. And then I got in, and I asked my teacher, Gary Maurer. I stayed in touch with him, and I asked him. I said, "What kind of student was I?" And he said, "Ooh, you were very driven. You just, like, you had a purpose. You had a mission. You would do the projects. You would ask all these crazy questions, and you would just, I couldn't give you enough projects to get done. Like, you just wanted to, like, what's the next one? Give me the next one." Because I just knew that I wanted this as a part of my life. I just didn't know how I was going to make it happen. Do you know what I mean? I didn't know like where it was going to go.
We don't know what we're going to do when we're, I mean, also look where we were living. It's like, we had no idea.
I grew up in Allentown. Yeah.
Yeah. I grew up in Orefield. Parkland was like a walk away.
Right.
The high school was the junior high now.
So
it is funny that you said that you had to get top grades to get in. When I went there, it was more, this was the last resort for like the kids who weren't like having the top grades.
Right. No, I think he was just telling me that to make sure I got good grades. I don't think he had any, I don't think he, knowing, like your math teacher.
It worked for you. That wouldn't have worked for me.
Yeah. See, maybe he was looking at my grades. He was my guidance counselor. He saw I was a good student. He just probably wanted to make sure I stayed as a good student.
I don't remember having a guidance counselor.
Yeah, we had him at Harrison Morton. Yeah, Mr. Nagy.
Harrison Morton. I never even heard of that school.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that was the junior high school in Allentown, one of them anyway. So I think it's safe to say that I think for both of us, the career we have, it kind of chose us. We didn't really choose it. It chose us. Yeah.
I mean, I've been drawing since I was a kid.
Yeah,
I have no memory of not drawing.
Right. Really? And you were drawing on the shirt cards. I was drawing on my Graham's when she would get stockings. Inside a pair of stockings where there was a little white card insert, and she would give that to me. And so, yeah, always coloring, always drawing. So
we're working class kids from the sticks.
Yeah. Yeah. So how do you then start to develop the style that you have now? Like where did that genesis start? Like, how did you start to, because what do you call what you do? You call it drawing with scissors? I mean, I know you do
collage, but it is drawing. It's more like it's collage, but it's drawing,
Yeah.
It's not like, I mean, I'm not wedded to photographs. Like I don't take pictures of like the moon and a picture of a dog and put the dog on top of the moon. That's not what I do.
Correct. Right. So tell me about how you developed that. Where did that all start from?
That's a good question. I don't know. What happened was the first collage I did was I was invited to be in a show. This was back in the 80s. Mm-hmm. It was an anti-nuclear bomb show at a gallery, with really big names, and I had no name. I was just starting out.
Okay.
And I was doing a drawing for the show, and it just wasn't coming out right.
Okay.
So I started cutting up the source photographs, and
really
into a collage. And it was really popular at the show. And it kind of, when things are popular and people, praise you, you kind of keep exploring it. But then, one thing I used to just draw these characters, these collage characters, and put them on my table, and then I would wipe them off. And it was pretty much, I guess, my wife, who was just like, no, you need to glue those down and send them around, So that's what happened. That's how that started. Then I started getting to the New York Times and all these other papers and stuff.
Yeah.
And the Village Voice. Actually, the Village Voice was the first one to publish one of my collages.
Okay. They're very distinct.
Thank you.
Yeah, and they're very cool. I mean, they're just fun. They're just fun to look at. They're very cool. And I was, you said something once really, really resonated with me. And I just told my art class on Friday about it. You had said that sometimes when you get offered a job, if you feel like you can't do it or that you're a little unsure, take the job, take it, because one of two things is going to happen. Either you're going to botch it and they'll never call you again, or you succeed and now you have a client. Right. I love this. This is great. Can you
That's absolutely true.
Talk a bit more about that?
I've always gone by that. I mean, there's work that I was asked to do an animated piece. I don't know how to do animated pieces, but I said yes, and it turned out really well. So I got more animated pieces.
Was that for the Public Enemy video?
That was Public Enemy, right? And I remember the director. It was in my studio on top of a table. They had the camera set up, and the director said to me, and he was shooting the cells that I had made, and my crew had made. And I remember the director saying, "Is this going to work?" And I said, "Yeah." Of course, I had no idea it's going to work, but it did work, and it worked really well.
I know, it's awesome. Yeah. You
and,
have it on your. I think there's a link to it on your website. You could watch the video, the Public Enemy video. I watched it. Yeah, fantastic.
My wife is the brains behind the website, so yeah.
Okay,
it's nice that she
right.
put. But yeah, that was a lot of fun.
Yeah. So that's the one that you're talking about where you weren't sure if you were going to be able to pull it off.
Well, I did that. I did stuff for Chris Rock. I've done. I'll tell you another. Oh, here's another one.
Okay.
I was called by Nickelodeon to do some pieces for songs, music for aardvarks. It was called. The guy who did the songs, and the art director is telling me. He said, "You know what? I like that. I saw in the Times this piece you did, where you had your collage characters, but in the background you had these pencil drawings."
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "Oh, you like those?" And he said, "Yeah." I said, "Oh yeah, I can do those." Here's the thing. I didn't do that thing in the Times, but I did them anyway, and they turned out really well. And I did a whole pile of them for Nickelodeon. But I have no idea who did those collage pieces with the drawings. But if it looked like my collages, I felt, okay, it's okay.
Right. It's funny. Neil Gaiman talks about this. He did a communication address for a college in Philadelphia. I can't think of which one, but he talked about how early when he was starting out, he would tell companies or places that he wrote for, magazines, that yes, I wrote for GQ, I wrote for Playboy, I wrote for Rolling Stone, when he hadn't. And they would give him the job because he was a good writer, and he wrote. And then what he did was he made sure that he went back years later and wrote pieces for all those places that he said that he did. As kind of like a penance, right? To kind of like, okay, I am going to write for those magazines. Here you go. I wrote. So
now it's true.
Listen, I love this. Artists got to break rules. You got to.
Yeah, there are no rules. That's how I always looked at it.
There's that too, right?
There are no rules, or the rules are meant to be broken. That's the only
Picasso, right? Picasso says, learn the rules so you know how to break them properly.
Yeah, and ignore them.
So here's a question I want to ask you about.
Oh, wait.
Go ahead.
when I was just getting started, there was a song by Elvis Costello called "Clown Time Is Over," and it had a great line that became part of a mantra with me, which was like, "While everyone talks and talks, somebody's watching where the others don't walk." And it's like, yeah. And I always tell my kids, if you see the crowd going in this direction, you go in that direction. You know.
Right. I like
So
that.
when I was starting out, everybody was drawing. Everybody, it was all pen and ink and stuff. And so, you know, collage was wide open. I mean, there were collages from the 70s, but not what I was doing, not drawing.
Right, right. I think the big thing in my day was airbrush.
Oh, yeah, in the 70s.
Yeah.
They even had airbrush in, which I never could master at Vo-Tech. And Bruce.
Yeah, I never got to use it. I never got to use it. I wanted to, but I don't remember. I just thought it too complicated. It just looked like,
yeah, me too.
Looked like algebra to me. I was like, I can't.
But there was one kid who was really good at it.
Yeah,
That's
and then it just
classic.
you know, it ends up as a filter in Photoshop, and now you can airbrush in Photoshop.
Oh, yeah.
You know, no, what I wanted to ask you was, where was the connection, or how did you get your head around going from Orefield to New York City? Like, how do you, what was that mindset? I mean, talk to me about that a little bit in terms of, like, you know, being in Orefield and thinking, all right, I got to get to the city. And I know a little bit about the story where you went and you moved into an apartment with someone that was already in the apartment because they were going to be leaving.
Oh, yeah,
right. So, just talk to me a little bit about what did your parents think about you wanting to go to New York, or, you know, any of that kind of stuff?
My mother told my wife that I talked about New York since I was 6 years old.
Okay.
Which basically because of television or something. I mean, how would I know about New York and Orefield?
Mm-hmm.
But what happened was I started going to New York on school trips, I think in high school. And then in Kutztown, they had trips all the time on the Bieber bus to New York City. And I remember walking down the sidewalk and thinking, this is where I want to be. You know, this was the late 70s. And then it was just an adventure. Like, we just moved in, and I didn't have trust me, you call it an apartment, but it was a compartment. The bathroom was in the hall. We shared it with like 7 other people.
Wow.
There's no kitchen. We had like a hot plate and a toaster oven. And there was a fireplace and a sink. That was all there was. And it was just a little box room. So that's what we moved into. But I really wanted to be there, you know. So, you know, it didn't matter and anyway, you didn't spend all your time in your compartment anyway. You know, you went out, hung out with people. And I mean, the whole East Village art scene was flourishing then. There was like great bands. There was hip hop clubs. It was a very lot of energy in the city at that time. And the great thing was the city was broke. So if you were in your 20s, it was your city. Like, you know, it seemed like everybody, you know, there were some outliers, but everybody was in their 20s. So that was New York City then. So
how do you get work? What was the process to get work? What were you doing?
Oh, you just I mean, back then you just called people up and they would see you. I remember calling the Village Voice, and the guy wasn't going to see me, and I just made some dumb joke, and he laughed, and he went, "Okay, why don't you come in on Thursday?" It was that simple. But I mean, I did jobs for the New York Rocker, which hasn't existed for like 40 years.
Sure.
But I remember also there was a band called ESG.
Okay.
And I had their record. They had a 12-inch single, and they were on a small label called 99 Records, which was really a store. So all I did was I said, oh, man, I'd like to do a cover for these guys. So I went over to 99 Records, which was a store, and I said to the clerk behind the counter, I said, you know, I would love to do a album cover for ESG. And he said, well, I'm the head of the label, you know. So
oh, wow.
He said, I'll put you in touch with them, and if they like you and they like your work, you can do the cover. So I did do the cover. And that was, so that, you know, you just have to be proactive. You just have to keep putting yourself out there, and you get a lot of no, but, you know, eventually you get yeses, and then you build on those yeses.
Yeah.
But the ESG thing, and the ESG cover, I always love, like, because I have a lot of illustrator friends, and they're like, you never work for free. And I did that cover for free, and now it's in the collection of the Museum of Modern Art. So it's like, so I still don't do stuff for free. Otherwise, nobody's going to see your work when you're when you're starting out.
So it's interesting. Back then, I would imagine you'd have to haul your work around like in a
Yeah,
portfolio.
yeah,
Portfolio. Right? Imagine that.
Portfolio you took to schools,
Yeah, and then you open up and then somebody looks at for 5 seconds and decides, whether or not they're going to use you. Right?
Yeah, I mean, I had art directors that I eventually worked for. No, I didn't do work for this art director. I don't want to say his name. He's a great guy, but I don't want to say his name. But he looked at my portfolio and he was turning the pages and he went, "I don't like collage. I don't use collage." But eventually he didn't use me in at the paper that he worked at, but he did publish me in books. Yeah.
Okay. So how do you, one of the things that I struggle with, and even to this day, rejection, right? So in those early days,
it's just part of it.
Okay.
I think of it as like, actors that audition or something. I mean, it's a kind of entertainment. So yeah, I mean, it's very competitive. So,
Sure.
People are going to beat you out and you're going to beat other people out for jobs and stuff. That's just the way it is. It's part of it, being rejected. But you just toughen up. You don't give up. You just keep doing it.
I think there's one anecdote talks about how in sales, or which, if you're selling yourself, it's sales. For every 10, calls that you have, 9 will be a no, and then there'll be one yes, right? And but that one yes could lead to multiple other yeses. It could lead down another road or other roads but that one yes, right?
Right.
So yeah,
and I had years of no's, years of no's with spotty, like getting stuff published here and there,
and you probably had no's from people that ultimately became yeses.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Talk to me about that MoMA exhibit you did. It was a one person show you did. That's really awesome. Talk to me about that.
It's the only it's the only show of an illustrator in the entire history of the museum.
Wow.
There was over 72 pieces, I think. Yeah. What would you like to know? How it came about?
Just how it came about, yeah, and how that felt, and what your experience with it.
Well, how it came about was that I did a piece for the Village. I did a piece for the Village Voice, and then there was a gallery on 83rd Street across from the Met that did a show called Masters of Collage. But I wasn't one of the masters, but they asked me to be in it, and they had like some contemporary people in the back, but it was all like Kurt Schwitters and Hannah Hoch, like all these giants of collage, Joseph Cornell, like those kind of people.
Okay.
So, and where my collage was back where they cut the mats. So like there was like mats and mat knives and stuff, and then our work was hanging on these walls. So a curator from MoMA went to that show to look at Joseph Cornell or whatever, or Kurt Schwitters, and he went in the back. And then I got a call asking me if I wanted to put a piece, or if I would sell them a piece. No, yeah, sell them a piece for the collection.
Okay.
And I said, yeah. So he came down to my studio. Actually, he came down to the studio the day of the funeral of a friend of mine. So I came from the funeral to my whatever, and he started putting my work out on the floor of my studio. And he went, "I think we have a show here."
Wow.
And that's how it started.
Wow. Well, was that a cool experience? I mean, I imagine that'd be a really cool experience.
I mean, because it's completely unexpected. I never expected to have a show at the Museum of Modern Art.
How long did it last?
Although things were changing, I would like Keith Haring and other people, things were changing in that people that did illustration were also fine art. So it was seen differently at that, it started to be seen differently. Where there was crossover. Where before that, it was very cut and dried. Like if you did illustration, you are not invited into the fine art world. You're not welcome. But that changed like in the 80s. I think with all these village art scene and stuff. And they were doing a lot of cartoony stuff, like the artists in the East Village and things. And I think that's why it changed.
So how much would you say timing played a role in kind of how you did? It seems like you kind of caught a wave.
Yeah, it's completely timing. It's completely luck. It's completely accidental. I mean, I had the work, show them.
Right.
But yeah, it was completely like this curator walked into this gallery, went into the back and saw a collage of mine and liked it and wanted to know if he could buy it for the collection or buy one for the collection. I was like, that's complete luck. Yeah. I know exactly. Part of that gallery, the woman who ran the gallery called me to be part of her collage exhibit. Otherwise, I had no idea who she was. I had no idea what the gallery was. So this was the first time I was in this gallery.
Yeah, I tell you, I think about a lot of that because it's almost like, you know, you can have all the talent in the world. Someone still has to see it and kind of champion it, right? So it's like, how do you prepare for that? How do you make sure that those people, but I guess you just by what you're saying, by, you know, putting yourself out there, being willing to kind of do some stuff that might be, you know, maybe no charge, and just to kind of get your work seen, and right time, right place.
It's the whole, like, don't say no to anything, you know, so that your work is out there, and so that you're doing like a great body of work as well. I don't mean great as in fantastic work. I mean a large body of work.
You know, it's one of the things I find fascinating being a new teacher and working with these young artists, up and coming artists. I have some really talented kids, and I can see it, you know, as being in the field for 40 years, I can kind of see their path. Like there is some talent here, and they really struggle with compliments. This younger generation, like when I give someone a compliment, I don't do it just because I'm the teacher, right? I'm doing it because I want to share my thought with you, and it's authentic. It's coming from a pure place, and they don't know how to act. Like, and I'm thinking, like, what is going on here, right? Where they're just not comfortable with hearing someone resonate with their work.
You know, I think that part of that is because I think about it for myself. Like when people tell me like they really like my work or whatever, it's because I live with it, you know. So it's like, it's, you know, and I do it. So I don't think it's that special because it's just me doing it. So when somebody says they really like it, you're kind of like, oh, okay, thank you. But I mean, I'm not good about compliments.
Right.
I like them.
You know, you just mentioned a person, Keith Haring, another Kutztown guy.
Yeah.
Did you know him?
No, I met him in Kutztown, and I
met
him a few times in New York, but I didn't really. We weren't like close friends or anything. We knew each other, but we weren't tight.
Yeah. So how do you stay fresh? How do you stay current? How do you stay motivated? How do you stay inspired?
I don't know. It's just what you've been doing since you're a little kid, and it's really to be able to do it now at this age is it's kind of amazing, I guess. Yes, but I just like making pictures, I guess, you know.
And
that's how I stay motivated. But sometimes you do have to talk yourself into it.
Right. Well, that's sure, the dedication. So what do you think would have happened to you had you not found art? What do you think, or art found you? What do you think would have happened? You ever think about that?
I would probably take it over my dad's garbage route or something like that, you know. I mean, my father,
What was that piece of advice your father gave you?
Well, my father said to me once, we're working on the garbage truck, because I used to work with him from age 15 to 22, you know, when I was home from school or on weekends. And we're on the truck once, and he turned to me, the only piece of advice he ever gave me, he said, I don't care what you do with your life, just don't do this shit. I thought, oh, that's great advice. And he was right, because the garbage truck was a fantastic motivator because I knew that was my option because of my education, which was pretty weak.
Okay.
I wasn't going to go to college. So I was going to be on the garbage truck. So it's like, it's either that or this. It's like Woody Allen said years ago about how, like, if he didn't make films, he would be a cab driver, you know, in New York. The options aren't great, you know?
Right. Wow.
So I always thought they should have Garbage Truck 101 taught at art schools. So kids would, you know, work on the garbage truck and go like, okay, this is my option. Although most kids don't see that as their option. They don't see like, I'm going to have like a real blue collar job or, you know, working class, that they think they're going to like, I mean, they all think they're going on to great things.
They should. Yeah, as they should.
At that age you should, but you know, there's a lot of work to it. It doesn't just, like you said, they're very talented, but they have to understand, like, you really have to knuckle down and do the work.
I'm trying to instill that in them, to let them know that it's, you know, it's hard. I think choosing a creative life is probably one of the hardest things you can do. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah. Also because it's so competitive.
Yeah. It's so personal too, right?
Who wouldn't want to spend their whole life making art? You know, it beats any, I know art meaning music or film. I have this thing like that. The jobs we most covet are the things that we loved to do when we were kids, which are like singing, and dancing and acting and making art and playing sports, not me for sports, but, and those are the things people really like. You talk to people all the time that wish like they really wanted to pitch for the Yankees. They didn't want a job on Wall Street. That was
right.
The Wall Street job, and all that money is a consolation prize for not pitching for the Yankees.
Correct. Right.
I think that's, yeah.
I love that. Did your dad get to see your success?
Yeah, they did. They came to the MoMA show, and
oh, that's awesome. Yeah. That's awesome.
A friend of mine, because my father, he was very kept to himself, but a friend of mine said that he was talking to my father and that my father was very proud of me, but he never told me that, but I could feel it, that he was. I remember once there was a picnic back in Orefield when I was already living in New York, but I went back, and my father was showing a picture that I had done for the Progressive magazine, and he was showing it to all my relatives, going like, they pay him to do this. But he was saying it with pride, like he was making fun of me, and also thinking like, how hard his life was, 32 years working on a garbage truck, that like they pay him to do this.
Right. How was what about your mom? How was your mom in terms of like relating to your art and you wanting to be in art? How was she?
My mother always encouraged my art, mostly because like when she was young, she used to sing, and her parents had no interest in her singing, and they didn't encourage her, so she would always encourage me. She even got me art lessons at the Whitehall Mall.
Okay.
I would have art lessons, which was kind of interesting because the guy that I got art lessons from was very religious. In fact, he saw my future because I draw really fast and still do.
Okay.
He thought I would be a great court.
Okay. People that do the court portraits or the court scenes. Okay.
I was like probably in 7th grade or 8th grade. I mean, it wasn't like,
Yeah. Question: do you have any of those early drawings you did on the back of those shirt cards?
No, I was just telling somebody just yesterday. I was telling somebody how my mother, she threw everything out. I don't have any real drawings from back then. I have drawings from 6th grade because a teacher I had in 6th grade saved some of my drawings, and his wife sent me Xeroxes of them, like 10 or 15 years ago. And those are the only drawings I have from them. But I always think there's a quote from John Lennon. He lived with his Aunt Mimi, and he said he wrote all these poems when he was growing up. He said, but Aunt Mimi threw the bastard stuff out. I was like, yeah, that's what happened to me. Like my mother my mother was like very much into like, doing that kind of tornado cleaning. When I was at school, everything would get thrown out, including my Batman and Addams Family cards. My John F. Kennedy cards all got thrown out.
Oh man, that's heartbreaking. That's heartbreaking to hear.
Well, I got over it, and she was a great woman. Otherwise, she was a great mother.
That's awesome. So, what's your creative process? How do you work? What's your process for working? You get an assignment. How do you start? What do you do?
I just start working. I read the article and I let it whir around in my head and just start to work. I don't like to do sketches.
Okay.
Sometimes I can get away with that because I tell people like, it's collage, so you make it up as you go along.
Sure.
If you work. In fact, here's a funny story. I did a job. This was quite a while ago, but the art director insisted I do a sketch. So I did a sketch, and then they approved the sketch. I went back and made a collage from the sketch, and the art director got back to me and said that they didn't think it worked. And I said, well, it's exactly the sketch. And the art director said, yeah, I think that's the problem. It's like, yeah, just let me do it. Just let me sit down and do it and send you the finished piece and not do the sketch.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay. So what happened?
And then from that on, I didn't have to do sketches.
So what happened to that particular piece then? Did you do
I did it over and did it just my own way.
And then did they like it then?
Because collage is improvisational. You make it up as you go along. It's not like a lot of, I have friends who are painters and they draw and stuff, and they'll do like an elaborate sketch, which when I look at them, I go like, that's a finish. That's not a sketch. And then they'll take the sketch and then they'll turn it into a painting or something. But that's not how collages think. I mean, collage is a lot, it's a lot like, jazz or something. I mean, I work a lot to music, and it just happens. Like I have no idea where it's going. And when I start working, I just have a general, like if I do I have to do an article about a particular topic, I take as much information as I can on the topic and then do the piece. But I don't like, but a sketch seems to me, it's anti-collage.
Yeah. I like that the comparison to jazz, because I think that can apply to even marketing and branding. I think sometimes a company, they have their main core essence, but you can kind of, as jazz can kind of veer off. It always comes back to that core musical chord, right?
Yeah.
And you can kind of do that. I like that idea. I like that
I work with
concept.
music all the time, but all different kinds of music.
Yeah. What's
I
your
mean,
favorite kind?
changed my direction as far as collage was just going to hip hop clubs and listening to like Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five. And I remember that, well, there was a record, which you probably know, Grandmaster Flash, The Adventures of Grandmaster Flash on the Wheels of Steel, which is just him, like, turntabling. I used to work to that all the time. I still do. Once in a while, I'll put it on. And I work to a lot of DJs and stuff. I mean, when
I
I
was
worked
going to
with,
say,
the reason I worked with Public Enemy was because I wanted to cut my images to Hank Shockley's music, who used to chop up music before lawyers got involved, and he couldn't do it anymore. But yeah,
I was going to say, what's the best music to?
I got to meet him when I worked with Public Enemy, and I got to thank him. I also got to thank Grandmaster Flash, but I think I just confused him.
What's the best music to collage to?
Anything, jazz is great. Anything. I mean, I listened, again, having a garbage man for a father, and because I was into music since about fourth grade, my father used to bring home records from the trash. So I would listen to classical music, rhythm and blues. I would listen to rock, whatever he brought home, like all these, garage rock, which I didn't know was called garage rock at the time, but he just, whatever there was, country music. So that's what I worked to. And I still listen to all that kind of music. And it depends on the piece. Like if it's, if it's, I don't know. But I love hip hop the most, I guess. The turntabling, because it's all chopped up, and that's what I'm doing. I'm doing.
Okay, I'm picking up something here, and I'm going to go on a limb and see if you agree here, because I like to make connections with things. Okay, I like to see how things connect, right? How the dots connect. I got to tell you, Stephen, I'm hearing a big influence really from your dad. Okay. Because you just told me he's bringing records home to you. You got to work with him in the truck to see what the alternative would be. He's telling you, I don't care whatever you do, don't do this shit. Do you see and feel this influence of like really how it kind of shaped you?
And the other thing about him is that he was funny. When I worked with him, he was always cracking jokes and whatever. I remember his other big thing he used to tell me, he would always quote the great 20th century philosopher Bugs Bunny, and he would always say to me, "Don't take life too seriously. You'll never get out alive." That was his big, and that was basically his philosophy of life. He was, he was having a good time.
But you see it though, right? You see the influence. It's there.
I never thought of it like that. Just one of those. It's a natural thing. But yeah, he was yeah. And his whole attitude of like, you just do what you do. Like don't. He never really worried about what other people thought or anything. But not in a bad way, in a fun way.
And he was proud of. He was immensely proud of what you did.
Yeah. Well, yeah, he was.
That's cool.
I remember once he was telling me with his tongue in cheek, after I was already having success in New York, he said, you could have had the garbage business. I was like, yes, Dad, I know.
I'm fascinated by this process of you kind of being in the truck and kind of almost seeing where your future could have been, and you saying, nope, I want to do it. I'm going to take a different path. And it's almost like,
it was just like, that's all right. It's like all they could do was make pictures. That's all they could do. So it was either that or the garbage truck, and I preferred making pictures.
Give me a quick.
Okay.
I was going to say, give me a quick list of the magazines you've done illustrations for. I mean,
oh wow, just everything. Time, the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, a lot of women's magazines, Esquire. Pretty much everything. Every magazine you can think of.
Did you do stuff for Entertainment Weekly?
Oh, I did tons for them.
I remember. This is interesting. I remember seeing your collages. I didn't know they were yours, but I always was drawn to them. I just thought, who is doing this? This is so funky and cool and weird and odd and just I loved I was reading that magazine every week or whatever came out. And there were always they had your stuff in there all the time. Like it was
talk about luck. That was just a great time because the art directors for the Entertainment Weekly came out of The Voice. So they had a whole different stable of illustrators that they liked, and they were all like like you just said, they were all doing kind of very different, weird, and it was great because they just let them do it. One time, an art director though from Entertainment Weekly, and he was saying this because he thought that I would disagree, but I actually agreed with the person who wrote the letter. But they were lamenting that they use so much illustration. They said because we really want photos of our favorite stars. We don't want like caricatures.
Oh. No, I love those caricatures. They're so fun. I mean, yeah.
And there was a lot. I mean, there was Philip Burke. I don't know, Philip's work. He did stuff in Rolling Stone on the contents page. Oh, brilliant caricatures. There was just. I
probably would know the work to see it, but I might not know the name. I don't associate the name. Yeah,
it was ubiquitous, and there's a lot of people like that, just doing different things, like pushing it.
And am I to understand correctly? You had the cover of Time twice,
3 times.
3 times the cover of Time.
Yeah,
that's pretty cool. See now. Those I
can't remember. I think 3 times.
Wow. Yeah, I remember Peter telling me that. He's like, yeah. And then that was when shortly after that when we became friends on Facebook. And then we had the Silvernail connection, which I'm not giving up. I'm still going to try to find him. And if I find him, I will, I'll make sure that you know about it.
I'd love to talk to him again.
Yeah. I think it would
I mean, he was like friends with my parents. That's how much he was into like.
You went a lot deeper than I realized with him. That's really cool.
Oh yeah. I used to hang out at his apartment a lot. I
even got a hold of his. I was talking to his ex-wife, and she had told me. She said, "I have not heard from him in 25 years." So
it was funny. She taught at Parkland.
Okay.
And I remember her staring at me when I was at lunch.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know why she was staring at me. And then she came over and she goes, "You're Steven, you're Bruce Silvernail's student." And I go, "Yeah." He goes, "Oh," he goes on and on about you.
Okay. Well, if you ever find him as well, you need to let me know because I do want to thank him for being a positive influence. Because listen, creative people, I'm not going to tell you something you don't know. We can tend to be misunderstood sometimes.
We're hard on ourselves,
hard on ourselves.
Like I just said, we do what we do all the time, so we see it all the time. So we don't think it's anything special.
Right.
And it does take people outside of you to go like, "No, you're doing something quite interesting there." And it's like, okay. And with him, it was the drawings, like the endless drawings on the shirt backs.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then when I graduated from his class, there was a summer class, and I don't know if I did this for free, if it was paid, but I was his assistant for the summer class.
Oh, wow.
For other students coming in who were going to go on to Vo-Tech in the next semester after summer.
Mm-hmm.
That was when I was at Kutztown, I guess.
Okay.
Or just before.
So I can tell that I can tell you're still having fun.
Oh yeah. I mean,
no reason to end, no reason to stop, right?
People say like, "Enjoy your day," and I always go like, "Well, I always enjoy my day. I get to spend it with me."
I would think your biggest adversary is wind.
That's true, but here's something about that. And cats. But
cats.
Sometimes I'm doing a piece, and the wind would either blow what I'm doing, or a cat, one of my daughter's cats, will jump up on the board, and then I'll look and I'll go like, what that cat just did is more interesting than what I was doing. And I follow what the cat did or what the wind did. And they blow the pieces and you go like, yeah, that's more interesting than what I was coming up.
I call that divine inspiration. You got to know when that happens, you got to recognize, you got to be able to recognize it. And I know you do.
Yeah.
So, it's
that improvisation thing where it's like anything,
right.
Whatever happens is good. It happens.
Right.
But you don't overthink it. And it's all in there anyway, so it's all in your head already. So it's going to be fun.
Wow. That's so cool. So if people wanted to check out your stuff, what's your website?
It's StevenKroninger.net.
Okay. So StephenKroninger.net. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Because yeah, my wife set up the shop. It's just stuff.
And is it true your wife works at Ogilvy?
No, she was at Y&R, but she's not at
Oh,
Y&R.
why not? Okay.
Freelance. Yeah.
Freelance. Okay. So two creative people.
I did do work for Y&R. I actually won a gold medal from something I did for Y&R.
Really?
Society of Illustrators. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
It's there.
So where do you see yourself in the next 5 years, 10 years? Where are you gonna keep doing your thing?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think artists never retire for the most part. I mean, I always think of like, wasn't it Renoir who had the brushes like strapped to his arthritic hands, and also like worked when he was blind, and Matisse was sick in a wheelchair and he was doing his cutouts.
Yep.
In the most part, I don't think artists retire, so I don't think I'll just make pictures. What else can I do?
Right. Well, I love your work. I love your work. It's fantastic.
Oh, thanks.
And I want other people to kind of see it. So hopefully people listening to this will go look at your website and discover you. And obviously you've had quite the storied career, my friend.
Thank you.
Impressive.
Well, I hope I was interesting. I don't know.
Yeah, well, you are, and your work is, and I'm glad that you're doing what you're doing, and I appreciate you coming on Yack and sharing some of your insights and your thoughts.
Yeah, this was fun. Thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely.
Just for this song. No, I'm kidding.
Stephen, be well, okay? And I really enjoyed talking to you.
I enjoyed talking to you.
All right, take care, my friend. Ideas. All right.
Okay. Bye.
All right, Yackers. Hope you enjoyed it, because we have many more great conversations planned and guests lined up ready to yak it up. Yack is sponsored and produced by ASR Media. Theme song was written and performed by Dan Ross. Yack is the official podcast of the AAF Greater Lehigh Valley Ad Club. Stay hungry, stay humble. Till next time.
This episode of Yack is rated O for, oh man, that was good.